is it giving us better results as schools, or it were better when we had only one paper? What is your submission before I can explain one or two things about the findings on this subject? The host, you can check on the hands so that we quickly move and give our side of the research.
Okay, Doc, I think you, a lot of people were not there. Just to give a preamble to the topic, then I'm sure I will have better participation. Just a brief preamble to our
Go ahead,
topic.
I'm listening.
Okay. We have, I think, Dr. Mlea.
Dr. Mlea's hand is up.
Doctor, you can go ahead. Dr. Mlea.
Doctor, unmute yourself. Okay.
Are you getting me, Chief?
Yes, we are getting you, Doc.
Okay. We can hardly hear you, Dr. Mlea.
Doc, are you speaking?
Yes, I'm saying maybe we can go by the presentation since we already answered the survey. Hello, I think my network is bad. You can say what you had said again, sir, Doc. Okay, I was saying, since we had the survey already, we can go by the presentation. Oh, okay. Well, I proceed, ladies and gentlemen. The preamble of our discussion is very clear. We want to understand if we are making proper headways in terms of pupil performance from the time when we started testing literature and English using paper 1 and paper 2. Now, from last week's questionnaire that was submitted to us, the aim of the same survey was to collect teachers' views on the migration from 1 to 2 paper system introduced by Examination Council of Zambia to the literature in English school certificate examination paper. This was a prelude to the plenary discussion to be held today that we have organized as a Lataz in Zambia, and a brief look at the results that you submitted. Some of you who didn't is fine, but the pilot from the few respondents indicates that as teachers, we have generally accepted the 2 paper system, about few suggestions for improvement. The survey, if you look at it, as we shall go, had more male participation than female. Another point to note about the participants is that most of, should I say 66.6% have taught literature for not more than 10 years. So this is what you submitted. This, we managed to collect the responses from the respondents that submitted, and this is what we discovered? We discovered that generally, as teachers of literature and English, we have accepted that this is fine. Now, by gender, just to be precise, what you are seeing on the display is exactly what we have. 21 responses came through, and the higher percentage are male. Then about the years, when you look at this pie chart here, it indicates that about 33.3% they have taught literature for about 6 to 10 years. Then 33.3 again, those who have taught above 16, they are only about 23.8. Now, when you look at 23.8% plus the 33.3, we discover that the respondents here are experienced teachers of literature in English. At least they have been in that class in this subject more than the other percentage. So the experienced people answered this. Then if I may get into the explanation of the research itself, look at the colors there. Blue, strongly agree, then agree, neutral, disagree, and strongly disagree. Now, the questions here under each graph, it will explain something. So it made teaching of literature enjoyable. What is the it? It's a referential to the two-paper testing system. So we are saying the two-paper testing system, people strongly agree it's blue, then those who are on agree, blue, but those on neutral are topping the list. So these, we can say, okay, half of the neutral can join those strongly agree and those who agree. And then the other half can go this other side. Already, it tells us that most of our teaching staff in that class, they say literature is now more enjoyable than that colonial, the original literature that you have been teaching before the reform. Then absenteeism, was it minimized? Absenteeism. So again, neutral is topping. Then strongly agree is lower than agree is there. But on absenteeism, we have what is green. Absenteeism, it shows that people disagree with the two-paper system maintaining the number of candidates in that examination class. So when you add the neutral, you get half, plus the disagree green, and the paper strongly disagree. You discover that this paper on absenteeism, it has promoted more absenteeism than the first paper, where it was just one paper, a child sits and writes, then she goes. So this one has promoted a lot of absenteeism. This is, figures don't lie. Statistics gives a very plain and disputable answers. Then look at this other question. I used to teach all components of literature before. It shows that people agree that even before, they have been teaching very well. Again, neutral. If we say neutral half, plus agree and disagree, it shows that people have been teaching very well. the component of literature with the paper 1 and paper 2, they are teaching very well, according to the research. Now, it makes teaching enjoyable. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, host. It makes teaching enjoyable. People strongly agree that it's like literature now has become a subject that pupils can enjoy, and possibly teachers also can enjoy. It has tremendously improved learners' performance. There's an agreement here. Should I say, whatever is here on this page 4 of the presentation, it is on the positive that the two-paper system has given more advantage to teachers and the learners. This is what we get from this statistics. Okay, now there are these submissions. Where am I? Okay, so this next slide. Literature is given to bright classes in our schools. The respondents strongly agreed, very low. Then the green one, it tells me that the teachers throughout the country say the status quo now, we no longer give literature in English to the bright students. And you know, this is like ADMA. Additional mathematics is given to children with high IQ. So additional English, that is literature in English. Now here, the respondents indicated that, they have indicated that in our schools, we do not give literature to bright students. It is just given to whom it may concern, and we continue like that. Then we have adequate learning and the teaching materials. These are the novels. Again, when you add the percentages here, it shows us that we have limited teaching and learning material for literature in English in our schools. It's a pilot study. Maybe it could be the correct picture throughout the country. We have enough teaching staff. Again, people have disagreed. I've been to schools where even the HOD refuses to teach literature in English. Maybe this is why we have this reputation from the real estate. So we don't have enough. So when we add the green on disagree and strongly disagree, it gives a higher percentage to say the teaching staff is not enough in our schools. Then we have an intake every year. Strongly agree. You can see it's like in the entire country, we have every year we have that intake of literature in English. More on slide on page 6. All learners in the all learners in the what's this? What's this now? Like the subject. It shows that not all the pupils that we select for literature are for the subject. Though when you look at the statistics, it shows that it's almost 50-50. It is almost 50-50. Disagree. It is leading. I'm saying 50-50. When we add they strongly agree, neutral, disagree, and strong disagree. It's almost 50-50. The learner enjoy literary devices. Yeah, there is not, you can't dispute. The children enjoy the literary terminologies. Then the learners enjoy poetry. On poetry, blue, they strongly agree, then agree, and neutral. So already here, we are able to cover that children enjoy poetry. Because when we add blue, that other color and that other color, which is neutral. We get half of neutral, as I said earlier on. It is on the positive part. Pupils enjoy our lessons in themselves. We are saying from the study that has been done that children enjoy, our pupils enjoy the novels that we teach them. Then where we, poetry should be the only examined. The figure strongly disagree is higher, and disagree is higher. So it means that you should add something, not only poetry, to be examined in literature paper 1. All three should be taught: drama, poetry, and prose, that is fiction. You can see it has now shifted to qualify the earlier answer on the first question. So we discover that the children love to learn all the three, unlike just picking poetry. Then I get to none of the three should be examined. Again, we don't agree. We are saying these, according to the respondents, all the three must be fairly examined, not only one of the three. This is the respondent, the results from the respondents. Now, the respondents have suggestions that they have the questionnaire. We need to remove certain books like Romeo and Juliet. Here, it's just like, we're not saying we should remove Romeo and Juliet. The suggestion here states that there are some books that have a bad taste to our teachers and learners. Then, if it were possible, as we examine our pupils, ECZ must change so that possibly paper 2, the way we have done with English language, where English paper 2 is the first paper to be written. Even here, if it were possible, the suggestion is that let there be first paper 2 to be examined to reduce absenteeism. I've witnessed this as a practicing teacher, that after children have met the poem, they have failed to find the personifications and other euphemisms and other literary terminologies. They would rather not get back to write the other paper. So this is why maybe there is this submission. Then to bring out new methods and techniques, this is another submission. People think we find some techniques to teach this subject. The number of texts read should be reduced to 4. And then we just need to Africanize and Zambianize the literature in English syllabus. We need to examine compulsory books. Is it compulsory or compulsory? Compulsory books written by Zambians and leave the options, the option ones to foreign writers. Gentlemen, the body has come. Host, the host, chief.
Yes.
Chief, please pick it from there. The body has arrived. Please.
Okay.
Pick it from there, sir.
Okay.
George, pick it up. First, pick it up.
All right. Let me just share. Okay.
Hello. Uli mtoani. Nene sinkala ye. Can you join the meeting? This topic today.
All right. So Doc was sharing on the suggestions from people, from respondents. So the number of texts should be reduced to 4. And I think there was a further suggestion that each one of them should have 15 marks. And then this one about Zambianizing the syllabus and the focusing on African and Zambian texts. Then novels to be studied in paper 1 should be Zambian novels. Okay. Then this part for how the paper should be examined, paper 2 first, then paper 1. Then after that, there is literature should be given to bright students. And the number of learners in a class should be minimal, not over 40 learners. And let it be given to bright students. That one comes again in the academic career pathways. Then books should be made available in schools. Some poems are too hard for learners. They don't have dictionaries to check some words. And then introduce an examinable practical component. For example,
Now, what has happened?
Hello?
Host, where have you gone?
Hello?
George, where have you gone? What has happened? Hello? Am I the only one who's lost?
No, you are not. Actually, the host is lost. So your call is in order.
Are we still on?
We are on, yes. Let me call. What has happened to the host?
Chief, how are you?
I'm fine. Who is that?
Carol.
Huh?
Carol.
When did you change the name?
It's showing.
Yes, Musanyaga Sarwe.
Yes, that's my husband's name.
When did you become your husband? How are you?
Doc, I'm well, Chief. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
What has happened to George? Oh, he's back.
He's here.
George,
Chief,
you
I
went missing.
I don't know what happened. My phone just went off network.
Okay, no. Those are symptoms of being in the bush. Go ahead now.
Okay. All right. So, sorry about that. My network just cut. I was unable to be in the meeting. Okay. So, so there are some interesting suggestions here. Introductory of a practical, where learners are like school-based assessment through drama, poetry, and recitation, such as that. And then, okay, then maintain two-paper exam with following arrangement: paper 1, section A, poetry, text devices, and then 20 marks, section B, drama, context, as in A, 20 marks, then paper 2, prose on 4 novels, 15 marks each, instead of the set of books lasting 3 years. Or instead of the set of books lasting 3 years, it could be better if they were for a longer period of time, say 5 years. And the last one is teachers need refresher training. That's the last suggestion. So, discussion can come from any of these areas of this presentation, or something slightly. This was just a limited scope to ignite the discussion. So contributions are now invited on any of these aspects of the survey, or any other aspect involving this subject. Okay, there's a hand from
Ponde.
Yes.
Ponde, unmute yourself. Okay, go ahead, please.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
It's indeed a very good presentation. Of course, I've been teaching literature now, I think, for almost 7 years now. I have agreed with some suggestions from the respondents. I want us to reiterate, or just to talk about the challenge, of course, to do with selection of pupils to take literature. I think from my experience, I can really concur with those respondents who say maybe if we can allow pupils who are, can I say, maybe intelligent to take literature. You find that if we just allow pupils to take literature, even those who are not able to read and write, it becomes very difficult to teach this subject to learners. So even as we are selecting pupils to take this subject, I think we're supposed to have that in mind to say we need some pupils who can be able to read the text, then analyze it, then write. They to be easy for teachers to teach the subject. Then coming to a number of texts, I think literature books that is supposed to start. I think I'm also for the idea that maybe can reduce to 4 as it was suggested. Then looking at the questions that do come during the examination, sometimes poetry, the questions that do come sometimes they are complicated to learners. You find that some questions, I think they are not equivalent to learners' ability. So even as we are setting those questions as examiners supposed to have that in mind, that we are giving these questions to learners, not students from the university or from the college. Thank you so much.
Mr. Ponde is gone. Samson James, please go ahead.
Yes,
you can unmute yourself.
I also agree that literature in English should be taught in a systematic way, because some of the texts that we are using, for instance, if you look at Kongi's Harvest and a few other books, the language that is used in these books is quite above the learner's understanding, and it becomes very difficult for them to grasp the concepts in these books, especially most of the novels that are written from the Western part. Then it is also important to introduce an SBA, because some of the learners have the ability to recite, to act, and they enjoy so much when it comes to dramatizing. So if they are given that chance, we will be able to harvest some skills from the learners, and that would make literature a very interesting subject.
Okay. There's a hand from Sister Mshoke. Host.
Yes, Mr. Mshoke, please go ahead.
Sister Mshoke.
Sister, sorry.
Okay, thank you so much. It's true, I agree with some of the things that have been discussed, and especially looking at Kongi's Harvest. I also want to add that it is a very difficult text, because at that time when we were at college at Nkrumah, we were given this text, and when we were given an assignment to just analyze the book, it was difficult for us as students. So I would agree with the others who say we should take some of those texts that would be learner friendly, especially at the level of grade 12. I think some texts are just too hard. And then I also agree with the point that the practical part of literature would be the best, because there are people that would be able to express themselves maybe in drama, in poetry, as a practical part than so much in writing. So introducing the practical literature would make more learners want to take literature and develop that interest. And also another point that Dr. Raised, where you'd find pupils are writing paper 1, and when they see how hard it is, they get discouraged and they don't return for paper 2. I had an experience one time also when a lot of pupils came to write paper 1, and after that, most of them said, I think will not come to write paper 2 because it is too hard. We know we have already failed. But those that came to complain to the department, and we interacted with them and encouraged them to come for the paper 2 because it would be easier than paper 1. And those that came to write appreciated, because they saw that it was very good than paper 1. So I agree also that it would be good to start with paper 2, because in that way, pupils will not be discouraged and will not lose the morale to write the other paper. Thank you.
Host.
Yes, Chief.
I think the picture that I'm getting here is that the choice of texts need to be done in a very precarious manner that befits the learners. It's not about Kongi per se. I think people are using Kongi as an example. I think that point is well noted. But on a lighter note, to all these the submissions, is Kongi a problem to pupils or to teachers? I submit.
Okay, thank you, Chief. But Alex, please go ahead. Alex, you can go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hello, Alex.
Yes, please.
Yes, I was saying that I hope there will be no noise because I'm on a public bus right now. But I want to bring out something. Yes, I've noticed that as Chief has alluded to, Congi service is for example, Congi service as a text was not only hard to learners but also to teachers, and I think it becomes hard to learners when teachers themselves are unable to grasp or to know or understand it fully. So for me, I'm not very much of the view of changing texts, but I think the suggestion I would put in place or suggest is that if there is a text that ECZ has brought up to say this is what is going to take place in the period of 3 or 5 years, I would like Lataz group to have a systematic method of inviting teachers just to analyze that text to the full, so that we are fully equipped, especially when we have challenges with it. Removing certain texts or books, I feel we are not competing on an international level, maybe continental or whatever. But I think let's maintain it. But we should have a mixture. One from Europe, Africa, maybe Western Africa, East Africa, and then Zambian. I don't really support the issue of saying let's remove this. Let's just have Zambia or maybe Africa. I feel we are reducing ourselves. I think. Thank you.
Okay. Host is gone missing again. Thank you, Sir Alex. Any more hands? Any more contributions? Any more contributions? Any more contributions, please? As we wait for host. Yes, Mr. Kabungo. Mr. Kabungo, sir, go ahead with your submission.
I wanted to make a number of responses to the submissions that I have had, that have been starting from the survey that was conducted right up to the contributions that colleagues on the platform here have raised. Now, the first thing I wanted to say is that as the paper was, as literature was written as one paper, indeed it was seen that the 3 hours, because if you realize of the theory papers, it was the longest in terms of time. Mostly that paper had 2 hours, 45 minutes, almost 3 hours. And certain instances, it was seen as we were examining our candidates, that mostly they tended to be bold, to fail to even finish in terms of the exam. They were, giving up on the paper. So hence the idea to have, to moot the idea of having a 2 paper exam, which, like the survey has indicated, I think has improved, save for the observation that has been made, where the suggestion is that we should be starting with the paper 2 and ending with paper 1. It is just a notion that is there in schools that paper 1 is difficult, because if you looked at last year's exam, for instance, comparatively candidates did better at paper 1 than they did at paper 2. except that, again, those who didn't write paper 2, again, the number could as well be seen that many had written paper 1, but a few had written both paper 1 and paper 2. Now, of prime concern for me is the suggestion, because at almost all Lataz conferences, Chief Lazaro, you would agree with me that there has been this cry by our colleagues, especially the teachers, to say we should have more of Zambian, books as compared with a situation that is prevailing today, where we have books from Europe. You recall that we try to mix that one. We will always have, like we now have Romeo and Juliet. We had Golding's Lord of the Flies, which was one of those popular texts among the learners, even teachers. Of course, now we have tried to bring back Wyndham's The Chrysalids to replace that other book. And then the West African and the African literature, there we don't have a problem. But where we have a problem is on the Zambian writers. Kudos to people like Chief Manda. We have teachers, writers now. Lazaro here on the forum. We have Monica, I've also seen she's on the forum. Among others that are coming on to create, new things. We wish we could have even those that are going to venture in the area of writing novels. But then when you give me to examine a text, we should understand that we need to look at the areas that an examiner would target. I'm sure whenever we look at questions, we look at things like characterization, we may look at the setting, we may look at the plot, we may look at the themes contained in there. We may as well, to a large extent, also delve into aspects of, literary terms and devices. There are times that we may put a question. We may want to, our learners to explain how they appreciated the literary terms in a text. But when you look at our writers in the Zambian situation, I don't want to pick a particular book for fear to be misunderstood. I wish I could, but I'm constrained because that is somebody's work and things like that. So you find that the depth in the Zambian books, the depth does not give the examiner enough room to examine. If today, for instance, let me just single out things for a part. If it were, in the syllabus, there is so much that one can examine in that book to a point that exams can continue even for 5 years, 7, even 10 years. Exams would still be set on things for a part. But certain books in the Zambian context, there's very little that even Chief Lazaro, if you asked him, even if he doesn't examine literature, you asked him, can you set questions? I'm sure we do this even when we are setting mock exams. How much do we find that can keep a book in the syllabus for many years? So that is one of the challenges that we have as examiners, let alone setters of exams in the literature paper, especially the paper 2-1. So perhaps your concerns, most of the concerns that have been brought forward, personally I have taken note of them. And I'm in agreement, for instance, where you are saying and I'm sure Chief Manda is also here. He will also approach the issue of examining the 3 genres, that is prose, poetry, and those others, and drama. And I think there are efforts and attempts have been made in the past where in 2017, I saw during GCE, there was an extract from Romeo and Juliet, which is a play. So it's not that they have just been concentrating on poetry. They have also been varying in the way they have been setting. Of course, you know, they have been heavy on their poetry, but it is something that can be improved upon. So the suggestions that people are making, most welcome. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Kabungo. I saw Chief Manda raising his hand, not technically using the physical hand. Chief Manda, go ahead and welcome, Chief.
Thank you. I'm not feeling too well, but I thought I could make my contribution.
Thank you, Chief. Go
For
ahead.
me, let me on the onset agree with Charles, who has just been talking. I think what he has mentioned is very true, specifically on Zambian texts. The depth is highly questionable, but I will not dwell on that. But what I want to say is that for me, there's no problem with the two-paper system. In my opinion, what has been the problem is actually the attitude of both learners and teachers towards the subject. And fast forward, let me say that maybe the background is very poor in as far as literature is concerned. In some countries, literature starts at grade 8. I would mention Malawi, Botswana, South Africa, they start at grade 8. So by the time the children are getting into grade 10, they are well grounded in some of these issues. But going back to the attitude, the issue of the grade 10 year, a full year before we introduce the text for the exam, is one area that our teachers mismanage. Most of them go straight into teaching things fall apart and so on and so forth, right from the word go. But if we took time to actually create a background, we would do the learners a lot of good, because then by the time you are giving them the first text, exam text, they will have some appreciable background, you know, in as far as literary devices are concerned. So for me, it's the attitude of the teachers. And as one respondent mentioned, a situation where both teachers and learners are struggling to appreciate a text. That is atrocious, and we can't allow that. I think that's where the main problem is. That once you deal with literature right from the word go, right from the grade 10, dealing with all the literary devices and so on and so forth, there should be no problem really for the learners, because you will have given them the necessary background to appreciate the the subject, as it were. Because when you introduce them right to the text for the exam, you know what exams do to anybody at any level. You know, you actually close them off and they don't appreciate the subject as it were. They are scared of the exam right from the word go. And I think that for me is where the biggest issue is. Let's introduce the subject well to the learners, and let's use that grade 10 year to actually cement the interest of the children in the subject. Now, I mentioned that paper 1 and paper 2 is all right. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, paper 1 has made literature easier, because now we are dealing with one context and one question where we are dealing with literary devices, you know, and then 3 essays. That distribution makes literature, for me, extremely easy. Because if you have taught your learners well, there is no way the children are going to fail to answer questions in paper 1, where all they have to identify is metaphor, alliteration, and things like that. Well drilled, well taught. These issues are very, very easy and very, very basic. And when you talk about literary devices, these are issues that children start learning right from kindergarten, you know. Similes, for example, rhythm and rhyme, these start right from the nursery rhymes that the children learn in primary school. So all you need to do is get them back to that area when they were in primary and let them begin to apply what they learned in primary into their literature scheme of things. You see, I find it very, very difficult where a child, given a simile, asked to identify a simile in a poem, can fail to do that. Just identifying a simile, just identifying a metaphor or a symbol. This has actually made that exam extremely easy because all the children are identifying are those literary devices, and well taught, they should be able to identify those things. Somebody mentioned that the learners who come to learn literature, some of them can't read and write. Well, perhaps appreciable, but properly schooled teachers are still able to get round. For me, my worst class of people that are just put together, you know, with no interest whatsoever, by the time they're getting into grade 11, that interest will have come. And when I meet them on the street, even today, they actually appreciate my effort into jump-starting them into the love of this so very interesting subject, which unfortunately we are not taking good care of in this country. I always talk about patriotism. Literature teaches you, you know, to love your country because you're coming from the history. That is what literature does. Literature arms you with that analytical mind so that even when you get into politics, you should be able to look at issues and analyze them, you know, and be able to arrive at the correct issues. But maybe as I conclude, literature is an international, O-level exams is an international syllabus. You know, all the learners who pass through O-level are expected to go and study in Europe, to go and study in South Africa, to go and study elsewhere. So we can't give them a substandard syllabus, which will not, you know, bring them up to the level of O-level students, because they'll fail to you know, to perform when they get out there. And mind you, the literature exams, and indeed all other exams, before they are given to the students, this is a leakage I'm giving you from an informed background, they are actually tested internationally. They are sent out there so that an approval is given, an international approval is given. It's not just assembling it here in Zambia and we forget. Mind you, Zambia belongs to, you know, a group of other examining boards, and these exams are shared, these syllabuses are shared. And when we put any substandard text there, they will not agree, and your exam will not pass. So I thought maybe that people should be aware that it's O-level, which prepares learners to get into university. And a substandard syllabus would definitely, you know, disadvantage us as Zambians. But that will not happen because it's not 100% a local paper, it's an international paper. I submit.
Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. There is a submission from Dr. Mlea in written. Dr. Mlea says, oh, I've lost it. Dr. Mlea says, Dr. Mlea says, I think we need to introduce literature at an early grade, just as Chief Commander said. In Zimbabwe and East Africa, they start literature as early as Form 1. This foregrounds the cultivation of knowledge in the learners. This, by the way, is one of the reasons why we have not produced a lot of writers in the sub-Saharan region. That is a submission from Dr. Mulea. There is another submission. How can a teacher of English who is headed by the HOH, who shuns the subject, diplomatically convince the administration to produce literature books in school? This is when, in the first place, you present the matter, but administration approves buying only 6 copies or less text. I've lost the text. Or less. I've lost the text. Okay. Copies or less text to be shared among the 30 to 45 students in class. May I find out from others, during the selection of learners to take literature, how much are the teachers of literature involved? Secondly, as experts in this field, we need to introduce, rather make literature practical. Our universities should strengthen the literature department and intensify the Department of Performing Arts. We have to divorce literature from English and make it stand on its own. Those are written submissions. Now, any hand? I think just to wrap it in, like Chief and Mr. Kavungo said, I think this is an international syllabus. It's not a local syllabus. We are producing learners that are internationally supposed to compete. However, I think the cry for Zambian books, which has been there for some time now, it's not that people are just have hardened hearts that they don't want to listen. We don't have, truth be told, we don't have the Zambian texts that are worthy standing a test of time in terms of examining, in terms of learning. I'll give you my personal experience and view. When it comes to reading texts like Things Fall Apart, The River Between, okay? You read Things Fall Apart 500 times, you discover 500 or more things, new things. You read it as if you are reading for the first time. You discover new things altogether every time you read. Coming to our local books, you read it once, that's it. You even start asking yourself. I remember on one of the forums, there was a heavy debate. We were asking, what are the themes in this book? And we're now trying to search and look around, maybe it is this. That is in itself is a test that we haven't yet reached that stage where we can have texts that can indeed bring out that which we want to teach. Because mind you, literature is alive. It's not a theoretical subject, it's alive. So maybe we should also throw it to ourselves as a challenge that us who know what is sought in this case, let us stand up to the challenge and write books that we can excitedly include, books that will compete with my favorite Song of Lawino, books that will compete with Things Fall Apart, so that even when we lighten the job of our friends in the literature exam setup, that even when I say, let's put this Zambian book when they say, no, we want things fall apart, we can argue and say, no, this book in terms of thematics, in terms of whatever we are looking for, it equals things fall apart. I think that's what is coming up. Now, Chief, before you leave, Mr. Kavungo and other literature experts, I think I saw a submission where it was said, we maintain the two-paper, but we change so that the two-paper system brings about all the three genres. So that paper one has, I think I read that, paper one should have poetry and drama, these two, and they should be context so that they envisage and bring out the literary devices, okay? And they should weight 40 marks, 20 each. Then they said, the submission said paper two should be prose, where there should be, I think they said 4 books, testing on thematics, essay questions, and it should weigh 15 per book, so that it comes to 60, and paper 140, paper 2 60. How do you look at that? I submit. Is Mr. Kabungo's hand or up or what?
Yes, it is. I actually wanted to respond to the question you asked after you read the submission by Sir Alex.
Okay.
One of the questions he raised in his submission was to do with the learners that are selected, that are given. He wanted to find out what criteria is used. Now, we must appreciate that after the 2013 curriculum, I think that one was 2013, yes? That's when the new, the curriculum that we are using was brought into place. That one, does specify. So you find there is a career pathway which has literature, which is the social science career pathway. So a class that is given social science is a class that has literature compulsory. And that is why we have this challenge, because when you talk of a school that has, say, 3 career pathways, the first career pathway may be a natural science. Now, you see that this natural science career pathway is the one that will have pure physics, pure chemistry, additional mathematics as compulsory. And so from the onset, you realize that very few learners in the school will be put in such a class. In fact, save for private schools and mission schools. In government schools, the cadre of learners that you find in a pure science career pathway may be less than 30. This is a school that has enrollment of maybe 1,000. And then you are going to have a few doing vocational. There will be those that will do GMD, they will do food and nutrition, and those that kind of thing. Those also will be put in that career pathway. Then if they are going to have social science and they have 900, unfortunately the 900 will be put in this particular class. We are in a marking session and you have a register that has 480 candidates. And then you have 85 scripts. So meaning that the difference goes for those who have absconded or who were absent during the exam. So now, what is the way forward? We are limited in our submission because this is a policy issue. Even the submission to say let the universities do well thought out, kind of submission, but very little input that can come from our end. Our end can do things when you suggest issues to do with texts, what text should be introduced and so on. those ones, yes, input can be made because it's the CDC, ECZ, and then exam, the chiefs as it were. So those can have that tripartite mandate and choose and listen to what you are suggesting. But issues that border on policy, we are limited and there's very little that can be done. I thought I should make that one. That submission, I submit. Thanks.
Thank you. Chief Manda, can you exit the screen? You are screen showing.
May I give my submission, Chief?
Yes, but in the meantime,
I want to
Chief,
agree with.
Sorry, Chief. Chief, in the meantime, we are viewing your screen. Just stop screen sharing. At the bottom there is a share screen. Go to leave screen. Okay, it's okay. Go ahead, Chief.
Yeah, as I was saying, I want to agree. I've even forgotten my train of thought now. But let me
I'm so sorry.
Let me start by saying that the problem actually starts from universities where our teachers are coming from. In these universities, we don't have people or lecturers who have the capacity to prepare teachers. These are people that are personally qualified as doctors or whatever you can call it, and they know the subjects very well, but they don't have the teaching aspect of preparing teachers. If we went back some years back, and this is why I become very annoyed when colleges like in Nkrumah will be turned into universities, and then they lose that ability that they had of preparing teachers. Because when you got into Nkrumah, the very first time there was a secondary school next to Nkrumah Teachers College, and the teachers started practicing right from the word go until they graduate. Now, in the current setup, we have a situation where we have teachers that do very few weeks of teaching experience. And obviously, at the end of the day, these universities are churning out not even half-baked, but quarter-baked graduates. I think I needed to mention that. I think the university should come up with a policy that whoever is going to be in the School of Education as a lecturer must undergo further training, get a practicing certificate as a teacher, not just as a lecturer per se. Yes, they have the knowledge of subject, but the ability to transfer that knowledge is not very much there. And they'll tell you, no, this is university, whatever. We are not here to prepare you. We are not preparing you for an O-level, kind of situation. We are preparing you in English. They will openly tell you that, and I think that is where the problem, the biggest problem is. As far as the structure of the paper is concerned, well, I appreciate the submission, but there's really no problem with the current setup. The three genres of literature are examined in paper 1 and paper 2. There's drama, there's poetry, and there is prose. They are examined in the current setup. So there's really no problem with the structure of the paper, as it were. The problem, as I said earlier on, is the attitude of both the teachers and the learners. And as far as the learners are concerned, perhaps it's their background, where they are coming from, where like Dr. Muleya alluded to, and earlier on I mentioned, the subject is introduced to them at grade 10. And that is not very good. You know, they are starting a new subject. If you look at business studies, for example, and then they go into accounts and commerce, they will have a background in business studies because that business studies is clearly attached to accounts and commerce. But when it comes to literature, it's a totally new subject that we are introducing these learners to. And if the teacher doesn't properly introduce that subject, they are going to kill the, you know, the morale of the learners. And once skilled at that level, it's very difficult to capture, you know, their, you know, interest, let alone have them do very well in the exams. So we need teachers that are properly trained and have the interest in the subject, you know, because I know that there are teachers who are just forcibly pushed into teaching literature. They are not even interested, you know, but because the school in which they are offers literature, and like Charles said, it's a compulsory subject in that career pathway they are taking. They have no choice but to take the subject. And then you have this situation where 400 plus, you know, start the subject. At the exam level, you have less than 100, you know, doing the exam. So Lataz has a lot of work on their hands. They need to, and this initiative is very good. But maybe my only worry is that how many of our teachers are, you know, participating, and how many of our teachers are enjoying this facility. You know, we need to get as many teachers as possible being upgraded through such initiatives. And Lataz, once again, hats off for this excellent initiative. I submit.
Thank you very much, Chief, for that submission. Allow me to professionally differ on one aspect. I think it would be wrong for us to really blame it on the attitude of the teachers. Chief Manda and you, Chief Manda, and I have been to every corner of this country trying to respond to the concerns of the difficulty part of Kongi's harvest. Chief Manda, you've done so much in the past years trying to unlock and demystify Kongi's harvest, for instance. And every time you and I have been to every corner of the country, we talk to the teachers, sensitize them, and they would even say, oh, now it is understood. Now it is good. We are going to teach. The same teachers 2 days later would tell you, no, this book is impossible. To me, Chief, that's an indication that indeed there is a problem with that particular text, for instance, which is making your work very difficult, Chief, because we are actually contributing to teachers' inertia when it comes to delivery. Because it's not about attitude, Chief, it's about if a text is difficult, it is difficult, you know, whether we like it or not, you know. If it is difficult, it is difficult. And if it is going to be difficult for us teachers, we are the people to deliver. We will find it very difficult and we will transmit that to the learners, you know, and hence depopularize the subject. So the point, I think, as it were raised in one of the submissions in the research that was conducted, I think at the level of choice of texts, let us endeavor to pick texts. There are a lot out there that will bring out that which we want to examine, but are equally user-friendly to both teachers, to the large extent, and learners. I think if we do that, we will rejuvenate the spirit of popularizing once again the subjects, whether we like it or not, as long as texts like Kongi's Harvest, which everyone up to date is still crying about, if we continue being, sorry to use the term, adamant, and we insist it has to be there, it's your attitude as teachers, teachers will start shunning literature. That was my submission. Mr. Kabungo,
can I come in, Chief?
Mr. Kabungo's hand is up, then Mr. Ponde.
Yes, very quickly. Chief Lazaro, therein lies a problem, because on one hand,
Mr. Kabungo?
And you have looked at the effort that has been put in to try and demystify Kongi's Harvest. Kongi's Harvest, if you compare, you and I have actually appreciated
Mr. Kabungo, you are breaking.
Why?
Mr. Kabungo, you are breaking. Or is it my gadget? Mr. Kabungo, you are breaking. Mr. Kabungo? Uh-oh, he's exited. Mr. Ponde?
Thank you so much. Just in addition to what Chief Manda has talked about, but of course, I concur with you, Chief Lazaro, for what you have just said. If literature indeed has to be very interesting subject in school, I believe, and I think we're supposed also to get the views or the concerns from teachers out there. You know, we teach from different schools. Some schools are in town, others in a rural setup. And of course, you should also understand the pupils that are coming from different backgrounds. Here is a child who's coming from the village. And of course, coming to grade 10 and meets literature for the very first time. So indeed, if we say Kongi's Harvest is not friendly to pupils, then we should put that into consideration. If literature has to be enjoyed by learners, I don't think a teacher who's a qualified person who has been trained to teach English, someone who has been teaching that even Kongi's Harvest for some time now, I doubt if that teacher can find it difficult to teach learners that book. But if we say learners, they're finding it difficult to understand or to answer, then we're supposed to come up with other options. If indeed the literature has to be enjoyed in school. Of course, maybe if someone is doing fine, maybe the learners they are doing fine from a certain school. Maybe as a result, maybe the learners which are there are those from good backgrounds, those who have understanding, in terms of reading, maybe literature and so on. But some of the pupils that we have, I think they have problems. So we're supposed to come up with solutions. We shouldn't just dispute, but we should also understand what the people are saying out there. Thank you so much. That's my submission.
Thank you, Mr. Ponde. Any other submissions? Any other submissions? Mr. Ponde, your hand is up. Any other submissions?
Chief, my hand is up. I don't know if you can see me.
Yes, Mr. Kabunga, I was about to call you on. Yes, Mr. Kabunga, go ahead.
Yeah, network did fail me, so that is how come I dropped. But
okay.
then, and
go ahead
I
with
guess,
the submission.
Yeah, briefly, I was saying, Congi's harvest for me it is sad that it has been, removed from the syllabus. We are going to, remember it, because this is the time when many people are gaining momentum, teaching that particular text. Now we are introducing, Woyengi. And already I have heard complaints from some people asking me, do we have so much to examine in Woyengi? Well, I don't know. Let's wait and see. Our learners, this is why I wanted to agree with Chief Manda on the attitude, the aspect of attitude. Chief, you agree with me that unless teachers are critical and appreciate what they are teaching, their learners will follow suit. That is the problem we have. Because you have, let's take off, for instance, animal farm. Do you think the cadre of learners we have today in these secondary schools who are passing with 40-40, do you think they are able to see what lies behind snowball? Are they able to see what lies behind snowball? So for them, they will be seeing animals, not animal character. And therefore, that takes to, we have examined the animal farm, and the performance hasn't been so impressive from the average, candidates. So for me, texts like Congi's harvest that are quite critical should be appreciated, because look at what we have now, Mission Bukala, where you're talking about screwing girls, and those are things that our learners understand. But of what importance thereafter? All right? Yeah, so those are the situations. So when Chief Manda says it's the attitude, and I liked where you said, yes, and I liked where you said you have moved from far and wide trying to demystify the teaching of Congi's harvest with Chief Manda. Although the people complain, but today you are able to appreciate the, to talk of the Aweri fraternity. What are they? You see them in motion, you see them in action, and if well taught, and with if teachers were to be prepared for this, long, I can assure you that paper one was going to lose the pangs that it does have today, if that book was left in there. With Woyengi replacing Congi's harvest, let's wait and see. Today is 6th of June. I submit.
Come on, Charles. Okay. Charles, don't be emotional. Eh?
These are some of the things that are quite close to our hearts, Chief. So
yes, but you don't have to be defensive.
No,
you have
I'm
to
not.
Listen
I'm
to,
not.
You don't.
I'm not. Actually,
what
I
is
was
important
just
is you and I to get the views of the people on the ground.
Yes, sir.
To get the views of the people on the ground. I think that one is very important. It will help us a lot. And
indeed, I appreciate your submission. Thank you.
Yeah, because indeed, I mean, we can't pretend we haven't heard the cries of the people over Congi's harvest. Okay, where for us we find it very, very didactic and very. It's not everyone. Actually, if we were to rate, and if we were to carry a survey in the country, we may be surprised to find that 90% have found who say they've difficulties with Congi's harvest.
There's even a teacher I have. There's even a teacher, just to agree with you, Chief, briefly. Yeah. There's a teacher I have at our school in the department where I am, who says, even because there was a time we had it as our CPD, and this teacher says, I don't even know, I saw that we had it at Nkrumah, but our lecturer didn't make us understand this text. But the way you have explained it today, I think now I understand it. So I agree with you. And where you thought that perhaps I was becoming emotional, it is because this is, a book that you think you are going to help learners and teachers understand. And because of their cries, Chief, do you know that we have listened? And this is the last year we are examining it. So indeed we have listened, moving forward, we will no longer have the concerns that people are raising on Kongi's harvest. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Charles. For me, I'm not looking per se at Kongi's. When I look at the cries of the people about Kongi, for me, I go beyond that, and these are views that I've shared with Chief Manda, Chief Tembo, Chief Simusa, to say, look, I think what people are telling us is that let us be mindful the way we select texts. You know, let's be mindful of the way we select tests. Let's not be seen as if we are there to make people feel it in terms of exams, you know. So I think basically that's my view about the matter. It's not about Kongi's per se. It's just about the selection of texts. And if you look at paper one, the current paper one, it envisaged the fact that, it was perceived as a very difficult paper because, first of all, it was something new. Secondly, the first section was poetry, which most teachers, for me, I don't want to blame it on the learners. No. Most teachers have never and are not comfortable with poetry. Even like Chief Manda said, those questions are very simple if you have prepared the learners. Identify a simile, a metaphor, personification, okay? If honestly, you don't need to have been privy to a poem in order for you to identify the simile and give the interpretation from the poem. But because us teachers have never been comfortable, and we are not comfortable, but literature is a challenging subject. As a teacher, you need really to live above a certain level in order to deliver, So, and then this person is coming from poetry as a section A, and it goes into Kongi, which the teacher himself or herself did not prepare him or her well, and then goes to Mission to Color, which is talking about abstract things. I think that's where the confusion, in my view, I could be wrong, but that's where the confusion seemed to be. I saw a hand somewhere. Oh, Chief, your hand was up.
Hello.
Yes, Chief.
I thank you, Chief, for agreeing with me that the problem is the attitude of the teachers. Yeah, because we cannot have a situation where teachers who are trained are failing to interpret a text. That is unacceptable. And their efforts to actually go over and over again through Kongi service to make sure that these CPDs that we provide, the teachers are armed with that, but the attitude is what the problem is. And I have seen it's not just Kongi service. Yes, I want to agree with you that Kongi service is also poetry. Perhaps that's where the biggest problem is. You move from the poetry section, you move into another Kongi service, which is also poetry. I hope people appreciate that Kongi service is indeed poetry. Perhaps that's where the biggest problem is. But I want to return to the attitude. Teachers need to read, like you have rightly said, above and beyond the level of the learners. Otherwise, the learners will challenge them and they will not be able to provide the answers. And once we reach that stage, then the learners lose confidence in the teachers and we have butchered the subject. Yeah, so it is true that we have a problem as teachers, a problem of attitude, which we have transferred into the learners. And I want to say that it is not just Kongi service. when we look at the other texts that are not African, we have a serious challenge there. Chrysalids, for example, Lord of the Flies, for example, and as Charles mentioned earlier on, Animal Farm, they have a problem there. So I don't know if our idea is to go strictly African, but as I said,
no.
This is an international syllabus, so we can't do away from these texts. Romeo and William Shakespeare, for example, these are international books, and we need to, apart from just teaching literature, we need to empower our learners so that they begin to appreciate other literatures. You know, a learner needs to know about Shakespeare, for example. They need an appreciation of Greek literature, which has been cited as the origin of literature. I don't know, in Zambian languages, for example, there's literature examined there. I'm sure you agree with me. There's a component of literature examined in the local languages. In Chibemba, for example, we have those powerful texts that the learners learn, you know, and are examined. So that background at least gives the learners some appreciation of literature from the beginning. And when they move into grade 10, hopefully those will be able to move with that age to continue learning literature. Perhaps going back to what I suggested, that we need to start literature early. If we didn't want to introduce literature as a subject per se, let's have a component of literature in the English syllabus. Mind you, when literature is not examined as literature per se, it is examined as English. If you went to universities out there, literature is English, actually, you know? So perhaps to invigorate our learners and prepare them sufficiently for challenges of literature in upper secondary school, perhaps that component of literature in grade 8, 9 would help. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief. Dr. Mlea, your hand is up. We need to start moving in the direction of winding up. Dr. Mlea.
Yes, Chief, are you getting me?
Loud and clear.
Yes. Partially, I agree with the Mr. Amanda there, Chief. But I think we should move towards the Africanizing and also Zambianizing our literature syllabus. If you go to America, for those compulsory books, you find that they will do their own books. But for these, the optional ones, paper 2, they will throw in the, you know, Achebe, they will throw in maybe Australian books. But for the compulsory ones, they ensure that they do their own books. The same thing happens in Zimbabwe. The same thing happens in East Africa, Kenya. They promote their own writers. The problem is, it does not mean that if you use local books, then the syllabus will cease to be international. It will still be international in as much as the themes that are taught in that syllabus are international. For me, I still believe that for us to move towards promoting, you know, having a cadre of writers, we should start by first making our books very, very important and taking a central role in the examinations. As long as we put them as maybe secondary or maybe third or whatever, we'll have a situation where we will not produce a cadre of writers. East Africa, when you see Ngugi coming on board and other writers, Mukoma Ngugi, Margaret Magoy, all those is because their books are appreciated in their own countries. So I submit that maybe
in as much as we would want to still maintain having, international books and whatever, let's promote our own writers here. That's my submission, Chief.
Thank you. Maybe you missed, Doctor, maybe you missed a submission from Chief Manda and Charles, that including myself, it's not about, no one is against the Zambian texts, but we need, as Zambian, we need to write books, novels, plays, and poems that indeed will envisage and bring out that which we want to achieve in literature. We know the objectives of literature. You know, most of the books, I think I'm an ardent reader of Zambian books. When you read, you discover there is no literary touch that we are that one would want to look for. Okay, it's just, I wouldn't want to start mentioning certain texts. They are just for entertainment, really. You read and you say, oh yeah, this is nice. But in terms of literature, yes, in terms of literature, there's nothing that you are getting out of them. You know, it's just like bringing James Hadley Chase. We say we bring it. Tell me, James Hadley Chase, a hard nut to crack, whatever. We bring it and say, now this is in the literature syllabus. Tell me, what question are you going to ask, and what are you going to teach or learn out of it? Nothing, because it's meant for purely entertainment. And that's the type of Zambian texts that we've had in the past. So let us put it as a challenge on ourselves. Let's rise to the challenge. Let us write books that can equally compete on the international market with the Things All Apart, the Song of Lawino, the Lord of the Flies, the Animal Farm, you know, so that indeed the people that select books will have no reason to say, no, we want Things All Apart at the expense of this Zambian text. That has been the challenge. Okay. Now there is this written submission from Ponde. The way the texts are selected for exams will either make the subject very interesting or make learners shun away from it. Thank you for that submission. There is another submission that is there a way we as teachers of literature can compel administrators to buy texts, because that has been a very big challenge where some administrators have even used that to do away with the subject altogether, because they feel it is expensive, and it's expensive, and yet children are even failing, the results are bad. Why keep such a subject? Is there a way, we can compel or make administrators indeed buy the books for literature? There's that submission which we haven't addressed. Are people tired? Hello?
Maybe personally I missed. What was your question towards the end, Chief?
Oh, it's not my question. It's a submission. It's a written question somebody has submitted. The literature among the administrators, they've used the issue. Hello?
Yes, I can. Yes, I've remembered. The one that was submitted by Sir Alex.
Sir Alex, yes.
Yeah, he wanted to find out about the issue of having some head of department who doesn't want to teach the subject, and thereby siding with the administrators who fail to buy texts. I think that was a submission, eh?
Yes, and it's on the background that because of all these issues, they make the work of a teacher of literature very difficult, hence producing bad results, which they use now as a whip to say, look, this subject is very expensive and the performance is not even good, and they do away with the subject, or they tactically stop buying the books so that you can get frustrated and do away with the subject. Is there a way that as teachers we can somehow compel administrators to buy the books?
Yeah, no, this one is unfortunate. This is unfortunate, really. I saw the submission by Sir Alex, and I must appreciate, because being one of the people in Lataz on the Copper Belt, we have moved to all the 10 districts of the Copper Belt province, and this is an outcry from most of the teachers, and it emanates from the fact that, number one, the teachers themselves say the administrators, again, the issue of a policy comes in here, because they are charging 200 per term. This is what we have gotten on the ground. They are charging 200 kwacha on the term. So they are trying by all means to try and avoid expenditure. And so one of the scapegoats that they use is when it comes to the result analysis. And when you look at the result analysis year in, year out, you find that literature is one of the subjects where performance is bad, arising from the reasons we gave above, like who is given literature. So yeah. So now how are we going to compare? That's what Sir Alex wants to find out. Compelling is difficult. We cannot compare, but maybe the best is to try and reason with them. The issues of who is promoted to become HOD, we have no control over that.
Correct.
And this is why we are having people that have questionable character, or somebody you hear. If today I will use you, my brother Lazaro, because I know you don't belong to the mainstream of where I am in the main system.
Yeah.
If they said, okay, Lazaro is the new ESO, or is the new head teacher, I'm sure there are very few people that are going to frown upon that appointment. Yeah. But we have people that are appointed and everybody stops to think, oh, okay, that one. And then you expect them to promote literature. So that is why in my area submission, I said matters that have to do with policy, government input, and so on, will always render us impotent as teachers and examiners of literature. Maybe what we can do as Lataz is to try and keep the fire burning, marketing our subject, bringing in chiefs to try and speak to the teachers so that they bridge the gap between that which was not done in the college and university to what is happening in the schools. Buying books, can we afford to compel administrators? Maybe Chief Manda, but I think we are limited. I submit. Thank you.
Okay. All right. We've really gone overboard and people are silently exiting. Any last remarks? Any last remarks so we can close, and then we will definitely compile from the submissions, both from this plenary session, as well as the questionnaire that we floated. And if at all you didn't submit from the questionnaire, we are still open. We can receive your submission. Any contribution before we close? Any contributions? Carol, Mloke, Sister Mshoke, MG, Samson Piri, Sumili Chanda, any contribution? Sister Mishoke, and mute yourself and talk to us.
Okay. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate the discussions of today. I have learned a lot. So thank you for all the chief markers and all those that have taught literature.
Chief examiners.
Oh, chief examiners, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Sinkala, for the correction. So thank
Chief
you very
Sinkala.
much. Chief Sinkala.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, sister. Anyone else? We are winding up the discussion. Samson Piri, unmute yourself. Sister, drop your hand.
Thank you so much, Chief, for the presentations and all the chiefs who have taken part. Do not tie out, but can you continue keeping the frame burning? The concerns that are raised by various members of the team are not that we want to bring down literature, but they are there to build up so that literature really becomes an interesting subject. So we are there and we are learning a lot. May this platform continue to be of help. Thank you.
Thank you, Samson. Loke, unmute yourself. And Samson, drop your hand.
Thank you very much, Chair. It is very sure we have learned a lot, but challenges are still there. We need your input because sometimes we have also our schools where we have a problem with our administrators here and there. There are so many challenges, books, and yeah, we don't have enough books. Imagine you have a class of 40, 35, 40 pupils, only have 3 books or 5 books. It becomes a challenge a bit. Also, maybe you take time in reading the book because you need to read. You can't give them the books, they go with the books. You need to share the books as you are reading, you are explaining, you are reading together with the pupils. So we need your input. If you can go on the schools the way you are planning it, it will be of good help as the teachers who are teaching literature in English. Continue with the spirit. We are behind you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moloke. Indeed, some of us, Chief Manda, we've been very passionate in trying to promote this subject. We've gone to almost every corner of the country at our own expense. Some people think we are sponsored. No, it's just the madness that we have, the passion that we have for the subject. So, and we are open. You can contact us anytime, invite us. We will definitely come and we'll do the needful. Charles is always at hand to help. Chief Tembo, Chief Musa, we are always there. Not that we know it all, but it's just a passion that we have, and we really want to see this this subject not die, but reach the heights that it deserves. Anyone else that would want to contribute? Okay. Having no hand up is an indication. Oh, okay, there is a submission here. What does it say? Chief Lazaro. Chief Lazaro, may I have your contact number? Okay, 0977 671556. That's from Mr. Ponde. Mr. Ponde, if you have my book, check, all the numbers are there. But if you don't have, it's 0977 671556. and same number on all the networks, 0966 0955, but same number, 671556. To confirm that you have gotten it, Mr. Ponde, call me soon after the meeting. Thank you. I think that's the only submission that has come through now. Ladies, Carol, unmute yourself and tell us what you want to say. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've come to the end of today's webinar series. Indeed, it has been very enriching. Chief City. Okay, indeed, it has been very enriching. We will definitely compile the findings, and we will ask Chief Manda, Chief Tembo, to input the document that we are going to come up with, so we can make a submission to ECZ. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much on behalf of the host, George Kanyama. Thank you so much for attending today's. George is back. What is next week's topic? George, over to you. George, over to you. George, host, what is the next week's topic? All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll use our usual platforms to announce next week's topic. We'll definitely do by tomorrow. We will announce next week's topic. Thank you so much. George, you are back. Hello, George.
Yes, Chief. Yes,
Yes.
I'm back. My network just goes off. I've regretted I have airtime. I bought bundles in MTN. I don't know whether it's because we had no electricity.